Thank you. Passed unanimously. At this time, I'd like to invite the RCMP for their delegation.
Thank you, Worship. Am I okay to stand and talk here, or do I need to be near a microphone? No, it's okay. I bet you can. Thank you. So this evening, I'd just like to briefly go through discuss our annual policing plan. So it's basically setting our priorities for our detachment for next year, and just reviewing what we had for our priorities for our detachment for the current year. So our policing priorities year runs as the fiscal year does. So we're just going to be wrapping up here at the end of March. So it's going to run through this. If you have any questions, informal, obviously, just feel free to ask questions or save them to the end, whatever you prefer. So our annual performance plan, it's a set of goals, basically every unit and detachment in the RCMP, and it just basically I like to sum it up and say that we basically ensuring that we're all rowing in the same direction. So it basically kind of steers the ship and at each level. But the most important part for me in this is that it ensures consultation with our communities. So there's units in the RCMP that don't police communities directly, federal units and whatnot. They have to do one of these plans. But for us, the key part is that it allows for consultation with our stakeholders and the government groups in our communities. And the biggest one at the bottom, it holds us accountable to you as our stakeholders and to everyone in the community, basically. So it's kind of setting our priorities for the year. So we start at the very top. I just kind of liken it to a funnel. So at the top, we have the broad RCMP national strategic priorities. These don't change a whole lot from year to year, and but they're set nationally, and so they're kind of the RCMP guiding us in terms of what we should be doing when we're setting our plans. So obviously, some of these don't really fit into, you could say they really don't fit into the day-to-day operations of Fort Smith, but I'd say otherwise, serious and organized crime, drug trafficking, that ties directly into organized crime, every illegal drug transaction. National security and terrorism, not so much here. When I did work in the Yukon, we had American borders quite close, so that was something that we were considering. But it's something that's important at a national level. And then the last three, specifically the third and the fifth one, obviously are the big ones that impact us. So youth and Indigenous communities are the two big ones that generally we focus on a lot. And economic integrity, again, people see that and they think, well, that's just white collar crime. That doesn't affect us. But I think more of it in terms of frauds and scams, which are something that impacts us more than most people realize. So that one is there. And like I say, we're kind of tied into them somehow. So the next layer of the funnel, if you're going down, I guess, is the every year the Department of Justice, territorial government sets out policing priorities for the territory. And again, these are broad categories that they pass to us to basically say, this is what we think you should be doing. This is where the RCMP should be spending its time. So we take those. So this ones were set, and I always kind of laugh when I do this presentation. So I'm trying to set our priorities for next year. These are last year's priorities. So we usually don't get these until probably April to May usually. But as same with the RCMP strategic priorities, they don't really change a whole lot from year to year. And they're broad enough, as you can see, that they don't really pigeonhole us into something specific. So they leave a lot of room for interpretation in terms of how we should be managing things. So these were set by the Department of Justice last year. And then our next step in the process is what I'm doing right now. It's consultation. So with the local government agencies in the community, we try to also do it with our partner agencies. So Parks Canada, Restorative Justice, Victim Services, probations, all the health center. So we try to interact with them to talk about our priorities, what they think we should be doing. And community members, I generally, in previous communities, I wasn't obviously able to do it here last year. I kind of arrived at the wrong time and then everything was closed. But I try to host one of these sessions where I go through this presentation for the general public and just give people an opportunity to come in and have an open mic speak. So I generally don't get a lot of turnout with those, so I kind of leave it on the leadership and the agencies in the community to represent because you folks are talking to your constituents and finding out what their thoughts are, hopefully. And then the final one, and this is something that's fairly important, is our crime statistics. So I'll kind of touch on this later, but sometimes people will bring up an issue and think it's a priority where our statistics don't really spell that out. So if it's not something, our policing plan is only going to be 4, maybe 5 points. So we kind of want to focus on the things that are impacting our community the most. So sometimes crime statistics will bear a different story than what people's perceptions are. So common local issues, these are not in any priority order. They're just things that I think are generally especially in small communities. These are common issues that we deal with, and common issues that we hear from people that are important to them. And everybody always asks, are they in or in a priority order? And they're not. They're just a list. And we also have internal discussions. So at the level, the management team, our officer in charge of South District and the District Advisory NCO in Hay River, we'll have discussions. Sometimes they will pass along things that are a priority that we need to include in our plan or are being included at the RCMP at a territorial level. And we also have discussions with our detachment members, what do they feel is important. So in terms of actually developing the plan, I'd say we set 3 or 4 objectives. I think this year we ended up with 5 or 6. We set goals, and the goals have to be measurable so we can come back at the end of the year and actually say, yes, we achieved this, or no, we didn't. So they're not kind of wishy-washy when we spell them out. And initiatives to achieve the goals, things that we're going to work on. Partners and resources, this one sometimes doesn't pan out so well if you're depending on other people to do things for you. And making that a crux of your plan, it's not necessarily. I guess it's more important that we take the initiative on most of the things, and if we need partners to assist us with things, that works. And we create our plan, and then we monitor. So our actual our system, it's called the APP, the Annual Performance Plan. It's on this major computer system that we work on, and it's accessible by everyone in the RCMP from Ottawa to all levels of management. So they're watching checking our plan. We're obliged to update it on a quarterly basis and make sure that we're putting the data into it. So it's quite a big application, and it like I say, it tracks everything for us. So our initiatives for this year, which we'll be wrapping up, no surprise because they were in every monthly report. Crime reduction, drug trafficking, community relationships, road safety specific to impaired driving, enhance the health and safety of Indigenous communities, reconciliation in youth, and property crime and prolific offenders. So just to show you the measures that we used in each initiative, for drug trafficking, the number of enforcement actions taken from intelligence and the number of drug seizures. For community relations, we're just basically measuring the number of meetings or events that we attend and the number of presentations conducted. Our road safety, number of impaired driving charges and the number of check stops or targeted enforcement actions. And I kind of hesitated on using the number of impaired driving charges as a measure because it's something that you really can't control. And I think we've seen that this year. So we set a number that we wanted to achieve. And despite our best efforts in stopping vehicles and check stops and enforcement actions, we didn't hit the number this year. But like I said, that kind of reflects that maybe impaired driving is not as big of a problem as we thought here. So again, we try to put things in numbers that we can control. We can control the number of check stops that we do because it's just a matter of going out and doing more. But saying you're going to get like setting a quota for charges or tickets is sometimes a dangerous thing to do. And reconciliation youth is the number of youth or reconciliation activities that we participate in. Our property crime, prolific offenders was the number of curfew checks that we conducted on prolific offenders. So throughout the year, again, this is no surprise to anyone, our communication is basically through media releases, reporting our crime statistics and regular reporting to you folks and to the leadership in the community. And internally, like I said, we have to update these priorities quarterly, and we have internal meetings to keep us on track. And just as another part of this, I just put it in because it's part of our system, but it doesn't really affect, it's not something that we report on publicly on a regular basis, but we have a unit level quality assurance program. So it's an internal auditing program in the RCMP that basically makes sure that we're on track with the rest of the units and detachments in the RCMP. So each year we pick operational and administrative functions, and we conduct an internal audit based on RCMP guidelines, so that, for example, investigators' notebooks, so that our notebooks are to the same standard that officers in Nova Scotia or Nunavut. So like I say, it's against a national review guide. So that's it for my presentation. Basically, the goal of it today was just to get you thinking and ideas for priorities next year, and specifically in those priorities, what can we be doing differently? What did you like that we did? What did you wish we had done that we couldn't? Obviously, some of them, they're starting to pick up now. We've been in the school a lot, thanks to Stephanie's hard work. Recently, in the last month or so, we're starting to get more access to youth involvement, which is good. But for a lot of the year, the targets that we set, we were just kind of hamstrung because we thought when we did it, set the priorities last year, that okay, the COVID will be slacking off by the end of the year and things will start to open up. And obviously, like everyone else, we were a little not fortunate. So yeah, so that's basically what we're looking for. We're looking for priorities for next year. What would you like us to do? And any feedback, I guess. So I'm going to try to do this. Got a typo there. This should be 2021, 22. I'm going to do this same presentation for our leadership group at some point. And like you say, if we have an interagency meeting at some point, I'd like to do it as well for them to solicit some feedback. So, and I do have the monthly report from February. I won't really take too much more of your time. In regards to that, if there were any questions, if anyone had any questions regarding February's monthly report, but other than that, I won't take a whole lot more time. And obviously questions if anyone has them.
Thank you. Are there any questions on the February policing report? Councillor Cox?
Not a question, just a comment on the really appreciating all the community engagement over the last month, in February particular. The school visits, I know I heard lots from my own children about the school visits, so it's really encouraging to see that happening and finding ways around COVID. So it's nice to see both the detachment engaging with the school, but also the school finding ways to accommodate in the age of COVID. And I think those are all my notes on the report. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Westwell?
Yeah, I guess similarly, I just wanted to recognize the extra work that's already begun and sort of comment on as some of the goals we'd like to see for previous sessions. We're looking for feedback. I've always felt like this straddling a line behind or between unfairness or frustration because of the general issues the detachment has maintained over the years of trying to maintain full staffing, which makes a lot of these good initiatives so much more, I won't say easy, but so much more effective when you have the resources to do community outreach, when you have the resources to do traffic, and you have, so I mean, again, I'm very happy, I'm sure as you are, it's likely that we are much prepared, more prepared as a community with a full detachment. So it's very exciting. I just wish there was a way we knew that we could maintain that for going forward, because it makes a lot of the, other goals like maintaining community presence and traffic enforcement feasible when you actually have the detachment and you're not sort of just surviving off of minimal resources. So here's hoping, but thanks to good work so far.
Thank you. Yeah, no, you're preaching to the choir for sure.
Mr. Morrison?
Thank you. For the April cycle, we can bring an agenda item for dialogue on the policing priorities. For council's sort of thought processes, would you see prolific offenders as an area of focus to carry forward into 2021-22?
Again, it'll basically come as a result of the community consultation. But as I mentioned, one of the things that plays into that is crime statistics. And basically, after a year, and Corporal McDonald kind of alluded to this to me last year when I arrived, but I'm not sure it's something that needs to be in terms of a separate initiative. As we've seen over the past year, it's almost specifically relatable to one or two people. And a lot of our prolific offenders or people that we're targeting with curfew checks are not necessarily the people that are committing the property crimes as well. There just happen to be the people that are placed on curfew conditions for one reason or another. So the initiatives are meant to be address like a large scale problem, and although it receives a lot of attention, and it definitely is an issue I know that sticks in a lot of community members' craw, if you want to use that term. It's the statistics don't really weigh to the fact that there's a huge property crime problem in the town, aside from one or two youth, and so it's attempting to manage them. But I wouldn't say that there's after looking at a year's worth of numbers, that there's a huge property crime issue here. But again, we'll bear that out with our consultation process and what the talk to community, because it is a big issue for a lot of community members. So if that's the case, we can carry it on there.
Any further questions or comments? I have a Councillor Westwell? No. I just have a couple of comments. In your priorities, and I don't know if this would go toward reconciliation. How does the RCMP currently work with the GNWT or social services on social or public health initiatives like wellness checks?
It's kind of depends on the nature of the call, I guess, and I think I know what you're driving towards in terms of it's one of the discussions we just had at the school recently, actually, about like defunding the police and shifting of priorities and things, and we talked about that, and in terms of like having an alternate response to a lot of these calls, like through other agencies. So we're obviously, it's nothing that we can address locally in our own community. I don't think it's something we're kind of waiting for direction from our management or from the territorial government. But I see a lot of room for like an integrated response to a lot of calls that we currently deal with solo now. And I'm hoping I'm hoping that sort of thing is going to kind of come forward for us, because there is a lot of room, and we had a big discussion with a lot of the kids at the school about that, because it was a popular topic, and that's kind of our view on it, or my personal opinion anyway. That there's a lot of room for improvement, I think, in that area. In the area around mental health calls and vulnerable populations and things, that it seems like we're the sole agency responding to some of these calls. That maybe perhaps there's other agencies or other avenues that might be more appropriate to help them.
Thank you.
If that answered your question, I'm sorry.
I think so.
Yeah.
Also, recently, the GNWT has released training for GNWT employees, but it's also available to the community at large, and that's their Living Well Together, which is specifically about diversity and inclusion. We had asked that communities or municipalities be able to also attend, get that training, and it is available without having to register. Is that something that the RCMP could look at doing for new RCMP members to the Northwest Territories?
Absolutely. If it's something that's offered on a territory-wide basis, I'm sure our training branch would be quite interested in that. But if it's something that's is it virtual training now, or is it in like that's something that we here at the detachment would be interested in doing ourselves. So if that's something that we can, like, if it's available to us, yeah, we'd participate in that. But otherwise, at the division-wide level, I think our training, they're definitely interested in things like that for sure. Yeah.
Thank you. I think that's pretty much everything. I just also did want to kind of give a shout out, I guess, to Corporal Leduc for being highlighted for International Women's Day online, and the mayor of Inuvik speaks very highly of her. So congratulations on that.
Yeah, we're very happy to have her here, and as you've probably seen, she's taken a lot of initiative already to do a lot that's helped us out. So, yeah, we're very fortunate to have her here, and her husband.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments by council? Thank you very much for coming to present to us this evening. And what is your deadline for you're looking for feedback for the priorities?
I was talking to Keith about that earlier, and there's no real firm deadline. I do have a document. It's basically just an acknowledgement of consultation to say that I did a consultation session, which sometime I think in April, but there's no set deadline on when we need. Here's what we think the priority should be. So it's I don't have to have the next year's plan in place until around the 1st of May. So there's no mad rush on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for coming this evening. Moving on, we have approval of minutes for the February 16th meeting of council. Can I get a mover, please? Councillor Couvret.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that the minutes of the regular meeting 02/21 of February 16, 2021 be adopted as presented.
Thank you. Can I get a seconder for the motion, please? Councillor Pissinger. Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Passed unanimously. Any business arising? Okay. Declaration of financial interest. Done this evening. And on to council business. We have the introduction and consideration of the committee reports, starting with the Corporate Services Standing Committee minutes from March 2nd. Can I get a mover, please? Councillor Cox.
I move that the Corporate Services Standing Committee minutes from March 2nd, 2021 be adopted as presented.
Thank you. Can I get a seconder, please? Councillor Pissinger. Discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Passed unanimously. The next is the CRC change room design approval. Can I get a mover, please? Councillor Cox.
I move that the CRC Renovations Steering Committee approve the change room design.
Seconded by Councillor Couvret. Discussion? Councillor Campbell.
On our last consultation with the public, I thought they had some difficulties with the change rooms. Are we going to follow the general public's wish to come up with some different designs or anything?
You, Councillor Campbell. Councillor Pissinger.
Yes, at the last meeting, I remember asking, being the very last one, that they will bring some options. They said yes. So where are they? To look at some designs, not just one.
Councillor Westwell.
Actually, then we also all met and toured the facility and toured the change rooms. The change rooms that were in the basement, which were identical to the change rooms that were due to be upstairs. And then the committee meeting, which I think everyone's a member of, voted to move forward with the designs as they were proposed, at least.
Councillor Cox.
There are also this week residents who would like to see what the designs are and actually see the change rooms in the basement. Can also book tours at the rec center.
Councillor Pissinger.
Okay, so you said that the people want to see these change rooms, so why are we voting on it tonight?
Councillor Campbell.
That was basically my question I was going to ask. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Cox.
My understanding is we're voting on it tonight because it was a recommendation that came to council after being discussed at Corporate Services Committee. And the recommendation was approved at Corporate Services Committee 2 weeks ago. And so we are voting on it again tonight at council.
Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, but I thought we agreed to have the public go in there and take a look at changes downstairs before we approve this or anything. Like have them walk through the finish downstairs in Peach Gym. Well, I'm just using a Peach Gym as an example. Have the public go in there before we go through with this voting on this one.
Councillor Westwell.
Yeah, I believe that was correct during the discussion in corporate services that maybe we could arrange tours for the public to see it as well. But I don't know that actually hinged on council's support of the change room design. I guess that was the idea. It was more of a for information's sake or to see what it was like. Not necessarily in a matter of reversing course, much as to sort of understand what it is the washrooms were going to look like. After the committee had toured the facility and saw that they weren't change stalls, they were rooms and so on and so forth. But yeah, the idea that we'd offer tours to sort of give an idea of what exactly there was being proposed as opposed to, or what is in the design as opposed to just more of a image of stalls. But it was discussed at corporate services. I'm not sure if there's any advancement on that front.
Mr. Morrison.
So based on the direction we received, we have put notifications out. I think notifications went out late last week, giving people the opportunity, scheduled times to come view the drawings as well. There's actually the current change rooms for the pool are under construction at this. We're not being built yet because we haven't approved the designs, but they're being demolished. And as such, we have 3 change rooms actually established on the pool deck that are in use by pool users currently. And so the opportunity is to actually tour in-use change rooms, because I think a lot of the concern was, again, the concept that, you would have people having to change and move from shower stalls to lockers while still in the process of changing. And so the opportunity is to tour these change rooms to see that all the changes happen in these rooms. And so that's been out to the public since late last week. The first tour happened, I think, last night or on Monday. And there's at least 1 or 2 more opportunities for residents to go and take the tour.
Councillor Pissinger.
Okay, like I had mentioned before, when we did our community consultation, as we called it, at the rec center for a few evenings there. And here we are again, inviting the public to come out and say, look what we're going to do. Why? When we're not going to change anything about it. Thank you.
Councillor Cox.
There were concerns expressed about the change rooms for the pool during our public consultations, but there was also support for those change rooms. And I think residents who have concerns with design have had opportunity over the last 9 months to express those concerns, because the change rooms were also presented at the consultations last July, not just in February this year. This is not, I don't feel like this is a last minute decision that residents have not had opportunity to vote on or to contribute their input on. I think the process has been followed, concerns have been acknowledged, and to address those concerns, the town has made efforts to provide people with the information to alleviate those concerns.
Councillor Westwell?
Yeah, I guess I've actually had a few people approach me about the space. I think so far, I mean, I've had 2 people express, in the span of the process, express concern about the change rooms, but the ratio of people who've expressed excitement or quite enjoy the change or like what's being proposed. Now, in fairness, they're predominantly families or younger users, but they've all been 10 to 1 in support of what's being proposed. So some people have approached me about it. So again, to date, I've heard people who I think everyone heard at the presentations, but outside of council and at work and at the grocery store, so far people have actually been pretty excited in engagement, at least that I've received.
Councillor Pissinger?
I just have concerns, everyone's saying, well, I heard this, I heard that. And it's each our own opinions here. When it really comes down to it. What does the community want? Where is their voice? If you're saying you're hearing that, that's your opinion from who you've spoken to, and I'm hearing a different opinion to who I'm speaking to. And I always get this, well, it's a whole new way. Everywhere else down south, this is how it's doing and stuff. We're Fort Smith. I've been down south. My children have been down south. My friends have, and they go to recreation facilities and fitness gyms. There is family rooms, but there is also a men's and a ladies. There is also only ladies only exercise rooms. So you can't just say this is how it is everywhere else, and we have to go with that. Thank you.
Councillor Campbell?
Yeah, a lot of our people here had residential school experience, and these change rooms they feel is terrible and everything. I heard a lot of that on the weekend, and a big percentage. And I think we have to at least give the people in Fort Smith here a chance to go downstairs and see the new change room, see what they think, and let them speak up. I don't think we should be putting this PRC change room right today. Not a big rush. Let's the residents of Fort Smith decide and see, instead of us just pushing it down their throat each time. Thank you.
Councillor Westwell?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not opposed to the idea of having people the opportunity to see it. I do take some idea that this is something we're pushing down people's throats. I mean, again, as it's been mentioned, this has been a long process, a number of years going back more than a year that these drawings have existed. Again, I mean, that still said, I know that and have commented on, the engagement wasn't as high as I would have liked to have seen. But again, if no one comes to the show, doesn't mean the show doesn't happen. Now, there is obviously people who are more interested in coming out because they are potentially upset about what they've heard, which is, again, the part of the process. Those sometimes can trickle in, but the idea is that we're, cramming it down people's throats, I think, is kind of inaccurate, in that we've actually had a fair number of consultations going back, and though the offer of having it toured so people have a better understanding, maybe to air their concerns or understand the concerns, I think is fair. I'd have to ask administration if the additional time to finish more tours is going to be a hindrance to construction or not, but I don't actually think additional tours is going to particularly change my perspective, only because I have actually had such a positive feedback from a number of users, and this goes back to pre-pandemic when we were first presented with plans. And again, the question of what do we do, and if I have my opinions and you have your opinions, and we all hear from different voices, that's very accurate, and that's why we're here. Because in the end, it comes down to us weighing the discussions and the feedback that we receive from our constituents and our peers about how we make decisions, and that in the end is the decision. This is how we all take our individual feedback from our different user groups and who talks to us. And I haven't had anybody or any concerns about how this might be related or affected individuals who've experienced residential schools. It's a new twist I hadn't heard yet. But other than the issue of it was raised about boys will be boys and people are going to be trying to be spying, haven't heard much beyond that. I don't disagree with the idea that just because it's in the South, we should do it too. I think what we actually have is a pretty solid design for a space that changes it from being the men's room, the woman's room, and the family room to being every room is its own change room. And now we have a space that you walk in, which is effectively the locker room. And then you go into your individualized change rooms, and they're not stalls. They're full wall-to-wall, 3-foot door, handicap accessible, full room, as we've seen now, which is why I think it's great if people have a chance to see it, because it is actually quite a nice sized space. But again, I think it's an overstatement to say that we're sort of trying to rush or cram this through. But again, we all have our different constituents and different people who air their concerns to us. But from my perspective, it has been overwhelmingly positive outside of the people who expressed their concerns who came to our public session.
Councillor Kissinger?
I agree with Councillor Westphal. We do listen to our constituents and that. But I distinctly remember myself asking, are we going to see other options drawing? And I said I wanted that noted. Yes, I was told. And I haven't seen anything.
Councillor Westphal?
Right. I think that what may be coming out of that was that we did have the follow-up standing committee meeting that followed that meeting, where council took a tour of the facilities. And I honestly, I can't remember who was all present. It seemed, I thought everybody was present or not, but and then after following that meeting and more discussions, we resulted in basically the cost of potential drawings versus actually council seeing and understanding what the space looked like. That we go ahead basically with the proposed drawings, and then we try to get better buy-in into what we were trying to do, because there was a lot of misconceptions about just exactly what the stalls and the setup was going to be like. So that might be where, if we're missing, or why there wasn't any particular other engineering drawings or other drawings brought up. I honestly, I'm a bit of a gap on that one, but that's how I recalled it.
Thank you, Councillor Westwell. I have heard in my consultation with the Senior Society reservations about the change rooms in regards to residential schools. So I know that it's not a one-off comment. Morrison.
Thank you. Councillor Kissinger's comments, I think it was probably stated that if we were directed to redesign it as men's and women's washrooms, that it was certainly possible. But as Councillor Westwell stated, next steps were given to the steering committee. Steering committee met and came out with the resolution that was then moved to corporate services committee. So we didn't advance alternate designs because the direction we got from the steering committee was to advance the design as it stood. If council wishes to start truly proceeding with alternatives, those are possible. They will take time. At this point, you know, they will most likely, the design work would cost perhaps some money. I'm not sure. I'd have to talk to the developer on that one. But at this point, I think we have two more tours that are available. I'm not sure of the uptake from residents to date, if we've had much uptake. Certainly, no problem. But that's the thing. If council wishes to delay the approvals pending feedback from residents who choose to participate in the tours, that's, you know, just something we'll have to deal with. I think most of the designer's energy is focused on library development and the contemplated change notice around the curling lounge at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Councillor Westwell?
Boy, I was just going to ask if this motion made any sense because it was recommending the steering committee approve the designs as opposed to council. But this opened up a whole other branch of discussion. I guess if there was willingness to share other concerns, like if you've heard concerns raised by another user group, that is this because of a misunderstanding of the space because it's seen as being a public change room as opposed to a shared change room as opposed to individual change rooms? I'm perplexed as to the association. If there's a misunderstanding there, or is it simply something that's been missed? Is this a recent issue?
Thank you for your question, Councillor Westwell. In regards to the comment that I had heard, I think that it may be able to be reconciled by having the tours of the change rooms by the people who had made the comments. I'm not sure that they've done that, so I can't confirm whether or not what their thoughts are on the physical spaces apart from the designs of the space. Councillor Westwell.
But then that's fine. Is there any overall downside to postponing this recommendation for another round of committee? Are we committing a huge holdup for contractors? Is this something that we can resolve by additional tours? I guess I'm looking for administration's feedback on that potential or what that impact might be. It's a tight schedule.
Certainly, given that we had approved the recommendation at committee to advance to a motion, I haven't checked impact. So my last conversations with the developer was pending, you know, approvals tonight. Having said that, as I said, most of the focus is on completing the design, development, and construction drawings for the second floor. And most of their work on the main floor is in demolitions to do structural steel repairs. So, you know, it'll be what it'll be. If we wish to delay it a month, I would just caution council, you're never going to get 100% buy-in on anything. And so council will have to do the gut check about when it is prepared to make a decision, knowing that it'll have opinions on both sides of the issue now or a month from now, right?
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. There is also the option to have a special meeting before a regular meeting of council. Councillor Westwell?
Yeah, so I just in the interest of our adoption of our stance on the TRC recommendations, I feel like we're sort of hoping to have meaningful at least buy-in or meetings with groups. If that has been raised as a concern, then there's no better opportunity, unfortunately late, to sort of at least try to have some meaningful dialogue or at least understanding of what it is that we're trying to do before moving forward. I can only assume and hope that it is brought up as a real genuine concern, and if so, then we should try to meet that and at least try to offer some conciliatory tour of what it is we're trying to do. I'm supportive of that. But we'd have to basically move to postpone this motion as it's already been made. So I'd be interested to see what other councilors' opinions are.
Thank you, Councillor Westwell. Councillor Everett.
Just, I guess, follow up to Councillor Westwell's comments there. I'm going to bring forward a motion that we table this.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Campbell? Mr. Morrison?
Point of order. We've done some research into tabling, and tabling is used not to delay a motion, but to advance another more important motion ahead of it. In this case, what you wish to do is to, what's the term? Postpone the motion. Tabling has no dialogue. There's no debate on a table because time is of the essence, whereas to postpone is a debatable item.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Councillor Couvret?
I guess I'll be revoking that motion and suggesting that we postpone the decision on the RCR Renovation Steering Committee approval of the change room design.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Campbell? Discussion on the motion to postpone. Councillor Couvret?
I would suggest that we put a specific timeline on when we bring this back to council so that we are not being overly disruptive to the renovation process and the planning that's necessary to move the renovations forward. So I would like to see us bring this forward at our next committee meeting, Community Services Committee meeting, for with the idea that an additional recommendation could come forward from that for the next council cycle.
To community services or corporate services?
I would suggest community services. That gives us an additional week, and I do believe part of the renovation project has been discussed more openly during the community services meetings.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell?
Okay, in this next week or so, can we, if we have some tours, can we put it up on the screen at the rec center and everything? Because if you put it on Facebook, I don't read Facebook. I'm not on Facebook or anything, but a lot of seniors and people that want to see it, let's advertise it good. That's all I'm asking. Thanks.
Councillor Cox?
Just I guess an information item that our next community services meeting isn't for another 4 weeks because of how many Tuesdays there are in March. I agree that there should be a limit on a deadline for making a decision, but I am concerned that that'll be another 5 weeks before we're back here at regular council meeting. And that's a long time in the construction project.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Any further discussion? Councillor Couvret, I think your motion as it stands, because you had it commented later, does not include a date. Did you just leave it as it is? Okay, thank you. Is there any further questions or comments by council or administration? Okay. All in favor? Thank you. Passed unanimously. Moving on, we have the CRC Renovation Steering Committee meeting with curling and the Winter Sport Club. Councillor Cox.
I move that the CRC Renovation Steering Committee schedule a meeting with the Curling and Winter Sports Club to discuss next steps in the reconfiguration of the curling lounge space.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Couvret. Councillor Cox.
Just quickly speak to the motion. This motion is from a recommendation that came out of corporate services, and this meeting has already happened, and the steering committee continues to, I guess, engage with the curling club.
Thank you. Further discussion? Councillor Campbell.
I don't know what to think of this one. Here we are discussing with the Curling Winter Sports Club, and did we have a sit down and have a discussion with the seniors and everything on the same things? On the reconfiguration of their, I know they sat down with a couple of them, but here we're sitting down with the Winter Sports Club. I have a hard time. I don't know what, I'm at a loss right now. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Councillor Kissinger.
And then the next motion, there's the same thing, but you add the seniors in that one.
Councillor Westwell.
Okay, so the CRC Renovations Curling Winter Sports Club is discussing reconfiguration of curling space. Is actually specifically because they had already had one set of drawings was presented and approved and moved forward. And we met again and were presented as options as a steering committee that we've introduced additional changes to a reorientation of the kitchen space and a change to the back space and a potential change to the washroom space that would all affect their space. So this particular renovation changes and reconfiguration was a change in addition to the already proposed maps that they had had. So we basically met with them to discuss potential changes to the space that would further reconfigure their layout of their space to allow for changes to their entrance or egress or whatever of washrooms and kitchen space and counter space. So this is sort of an additional meeting that we had with them. And then the comment about the other user groups and the seniors group is literally the next motion that we would meet for negotiations over long-term user agreement space. So those both came out of recommendations from the same meeting, and they both resulted in discussion at corporate services, which then trickled through to tonight's meeting. But the steering committee for reconfiguration of the curling space was because there was potential for additional changes that would effectively enhance the library space and potentially enhance the other multi-use capacity of the curling space, but to basically meet with them to see what their interest was in further changes that would change that space even further than it already had been proposed. That's what's being reflected there.
Councillor Campbell.
So this one is just for the upstairs, and we're not down in the middle. This is where watching the ice surface there now. Okay.
I will just add to the conversation that as the drawings had shown, the washrooms for the library, users of the Curling Club Lounge would not be able to access the washrooms without having access to the library space. And the possible change of moving the bathrooms would would be similar to the way that the curling senior spaces, where either of them can kind of be blocked off for different usages. So it's a kind of a major configuration of the space for accommodation of the washrooms.
Um, so we should just be having, instead of just meeting with the one group, we'd have it like another consultation like we did when, like the senior room had town consultation. We didn't have any meetings with the seniors. Here we are just going up to one meeting with the user group of one place. I think we should be going to the town and all the people of Fort Smith to discuss this instead of just meeting. Here we are just saying we want to meet with one group and not the other group. I have a hard time with that one. Just be meet with the town of Fort Smith for another consultation, or with the next steps of reconfiguration of the curling lounge space.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. I understand your concern. I believe that right now the next major construction or changes to the renovation center will be on the second floor. The library and curling space is.
So the discussions that were had with the Curling and Winter Sports Club are similar to discussions that were had with the Senior Society last summer and into the fall and winter. We actually engaged sooner with the seniors on the design issues, and it was when we were speaking with the Senior Society that we got the request for more floor space and you know, to address the washroom layouts. And these are some of the things you saw brought forward in the change room. The discussions we're having with curling are similar to those discussions, only they just happened more recently. And it's based on some of the consultations we had throughout the winter, where we heard requests for secondary access. And so when we started looking at the lounge, the request came in for secondary access. I think Councillor Campbell was involved and brought forward some. So this is where we took that and we actually sat down with curling and had those conversations about that access. And it's when we started talking about that access, we took the opportunity to talk about some of the concerns that we were also hearing about flow from the lounge through the library. And so by developing that access, we then had to do something about the washrooms, because I think, as Councillor Campbell noted, there is insufficient washrooms space. There was only the one roughed-in washroom in the lounge currently. So we had to create a door situation that allowed washroom access from the curling lounge when the library was closed. That required some reconfigurations to the kitchen. So those were the discussions that were had with the curling club. And again, this is just to reflect conversations that were had about the rest of the facility design earlier in the process. These consultations are just actually late in the game. And so that's why it's specific to curling and why it occurred the way it did. And so expect that based on that information, we've put a contemplated change notice to the developer to get some pricing and some design ideas about what, if it is possible, and what the costs would be. And once we have that information, we'll be bringing it back to council.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Councillor Westwell.
Yeah, I know our meeting schedule has been aggressive and hard to make, but some of the steering committee meetings have been quite valuable, and this one in particular, though I realize under the context of discussion we've had over the last month might seem, you know, untowards or something like that, but realistically, we had a number of issues to deal with, and one of them being during reconfiguration and shuffling around of spaces, we also needed a space for a sleeping area for daycare to accommodate as well, which I believe was also discussed in the seniors room discussion, where there was going to be some requirements to make changes, and just wanted to basically run by other potential uses. But largely, to break it down, we met with them because additional changes. We'd only recently discovered that along the back wall was actually framed in for additional windows for viewing spaces onto the gymnasium, which had been discovered quite recently. So in the meeting with the curling club, who again has already faced the idea that the town of Fort Smith wishes to use the space as a multi-use space, and their primary concern being how they're going to continue their ongoing programming, in their ongoing arrangements, but met that rather productively, trying to make sure that their concerns for being able to operate as they currently are, but still managing to share the space productively, were met. They also additionally went further when the idea was floated out that maybe we could create a viewing mezzanine under the gymnasium and create an opportunity to have sort of an even more public space with even more access and even more events. That these were met with some actual enthusiasm, that even though as long as their concerns were met about their own items and their own operations still being able to ensure, are excited to see the space being used more productively, and the idea of being able to use it for tournaments, and then understanding that we would work around Bonspiel schedules and make arrangements to ensure that their space was still quite productive for their use. Otherwise, the improvements in what the town was willing to come to the table with were met with actual praise, and they were quite excited to hear about some of the proposed changes. So again, it was a very positive meeting that came out of it as well, because here we are, admittedly, further along in that in a short period of time, we've been able to establish a back and forth over what it is exactly we wanted to do in a programming and in making the space more accessible and multi-use for the town's uses in the future, and have been able to sort of have meetings where needs and understandings were met, and yet also met with some optimism and excitement when proposed just how exactly we hoped to be able to use the space going forward and some of the potential for that space.
Councillor Cox.
Just a point of clarification for the benefit of the members of the gallery and anyone watching at home. The discussions about the nap space were in the temporary measure in the curling lounge, not the seniors room. I think that was yeah. I was just going to reiterate what Councillor Westwell had already said about how, while yes, in this meeting package, it appears that we have engaged with the curling club and not the other leaseholder in the space, that is in fact not reflective of reality, and that this is just the most recent meeting we have had, and one of the first of its kind, specifically with the curling club. And that is to discuss further options for them, for the space to be changed, to improve, to better meet their needs as a user club or as a user group, but also so that it is usable as a multi-purpose space when they are not using it. That is all.
Councillor Campbell.
Yes, I agree with you, Councillor Cox and Councillor Westwell. I was there when we talked about this upstairs there and the changes and all that, and I'm all for that. But just the wording here, that's what just gets me. Last summer when we had the consultation in the arena, we had it with the curling club. None of them showed up or anything. But this, if we're going to have a steering committee, let's just put it the consultation with the public, general public, instead of just with the curling, and let the people see what we want to do, not just meet up with one group and not the next. Let's put it right out there for everybody. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Any further discussion on the motion as presented? All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you. Councillor Cox.
I move I move that mayor and council and administration enter into meaningful discussions leading into negotiations with the Senior Society and Curling and Winter Sports Club for the intent to develop long-term user agreements for access to community recreation center space.
Seconded by Councillor Couvret. Discussion? Councillor Westwell?
Yeah, sorry, I guess I can air the same concern I did of the meeting when this came up at corporate services, which is to say that the entering into meaningful discussions leading into negotiations, as opposed to just saying that we enter into negotiations and we adapt some sort of formal stance, or we actually sit down and nail out what exactly our position is when you're talking about negotiations. Sort of it's a bit of a wet noodle of a, though I understand the intent, it still leaves a sort of undefined stance and an undefined position as to where planning to plan sort of situation, where we're hoping to enter into meaningful discussions leading into negotiations. I just would like us to seen, as it came out in the last meeting, that we actually adopt some form of a formal stance, and that also that it is new and unbroken ground for us to enter into negotiations, and we haven't really defined what exactly that is going to look like, who exactly is going to be negotiating, and what exactly we're going to be negotiating for.
Councillor Campbell?
Yeah, if we're, like, I agree with Councillor Westwell. If we're going to enter into the negotiations, we need to set what our goals and objectives are first before we even decide. I think we're jumping the gun here, unless we got some goals and objectives of what we want to see with that space, and let them come back and, well, we got to decide what we're going to do first. Thanks.
Councillor Cox?
Based on the minutes from corporate services, my understanding is that this motion is the direct result of feedback we've received from both user groups. They want to negotiate long-term user agreements for access to their space in the rec center as soon as possible. And I think this is the first motion of, I'm not sure how many more, to hammer out what those negotiations look like. But I think it's important for, I moved the motion and I'll be voting in favor of it so that the intent of council is clear, that we are in support of negotiating long-term user agreements for access to space in the rec center for those two groups.
Councillor Pittenger?
Yes, I just agree with Councillor Cox that we're in a position to negotiate, to talk with them. That's what we want to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Couvret?
Thank you, Your Worship. If I recollect properly, I was sort of part of the author of the motion that was, or the recommendation that was originally brought forward. And the intent at the time was to try and address the uncertainty that both the seniors and the curling user groups had expressed about where do we go from here. We've talked about interim agreements, long-term user agreements. We've been talking about those since November. We need to put something down. Come to an agreement amongst ourselves. Maybe it's something the steering committee for the renovations can address. What is our position? What's our vision? Where do we see these negotiations going? What are things that we're willing to accept as concessions? What are positions that we're not willing to negotiate terribly on. Those are things that haven't been decided. Steering committee can be tasked with doing that. In the meantime, I think we have an obligation to provide these users groups who have expressed concerns with certainty that we are going to move forward and negotiate user agreements for their access to the space. We've been unequivocal in our statement saying we want them to continue to use the rec center. They are welcome participants in using the rec center. We have to move the process forward. Sitting here dragging our feet and hoping that we can kick the can down the road. No. We need certainty. And we have to take that first step. And that first step is sitting down and having meaningful discussions of how do we best use these resources that the community has, these facilities, so that we get the maximum use for our residents out of all these facilities. Thank you.
Councillor Campbell?
Okay, I'm into for going into discussion. I just think we need some goals or objectives, like Councillor Red says, visions. We need to know where we're heading, or else do we just sit down with them and all hash it out? I don't know. That's come I'm putting it out there. We need some idea what we're going to do or where we're going to end up at the end. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Councillor Westwell?
Yeah, I guess my comment of the sort of wet noodle nature of this is that I feel that it's sort of the I understand its intention, and it was specifically in response to our meeting with the seniors that we had before the senior society before we had met with anybody else when we met at the arena, that we heard out loud and clear we wanted to move forward with negotiating a new agreement right away, and an agreement for what would be afterwards. Completely understand that. And that's why it was brought forward and supported, because I am definitely in interest in making sure that we've moved forward and met their, request to have immediate, let's work on an agreement. Where I get stuck on is not particularly caring for the entering into meaningful discussions, leading into negotiations, as opposed to just providing direction to negotiations, and that, council formally adopt a position for negotiations or a practice. Again, in between this motion and the last one, what was at the request of the group to enter into negotiations and have discussions was a petition presented by the group to not do anything and reverse everything what it was. So it does seem, and then I believe the mayor has been meeting with the leader of said group, which I suspect counts as hopefully meaningful discussions leading to negotiations, even if it is cited as being not, I can't remember what the exact wording was, not necessarily let's solve this kind of problem sort of meeting. So yeah, I guess I would just like to have seen us move forward with actually negotiations. So we actually have to, come to the table with something. And that was the nature of my motion last week, which is on the agenda later on in this meeting. So I don't want to hold this up any further. I just find that this particular, I think we tried to be too wishy-washy in the motion, or trying to be too wishy-washy in the motion by trying to be too accommodating and too broad, when obviously we know the steps. We just have to get there. We just have to meet. We have to come up with what exactly our goals are, be straightforward and clear as to what exactly we expect and want out of the space, and move forward with that. I think that would be appreciated by everybody.
Thank you, Councillor Westwell. Any further discussion? Okay, Councillor Corbett? Okay. Thank you, Councillor Westwell, for your comment about the meeting that I had with the president of the Senior Society. The meeting that I had was basically in the spirit of the motion before the motion coming to council, and in that was looking at not just the long-term management the use of the room, but also looking at things that haven't been clearly identified in our consultations. And again, like how can we move forward on this? Where can we progress? Excuse me. Some of the conversation that we had was about and this was the first discussion. It is in no way a complete discussion, but about storage during construction. It was about the space in the plans, the doors, the kitchen, the atrium, shelves, counter, washroom, about the furniture that is currently in the space, and about funds that have been used to sponsor the senior society dinner, etc. Also brought up at the meeting was the importance for the seniors to be heard about honoring the use of or the fundraising of prior members of the senior society. I did feel that it was a positive first step in our meetings and in discussions about the space. And I'm not voting on this tonight because I can't. But I feel that it is important for council and administration and to meet with the Senior Society and the Curling and Winter Sports Club to continue the discussions about the long-term use of the facility and what is going to happen to the property in the meantime, etc. Councillor Westwell.
Yeah, I guess I just continue to have this sort of concerns over council's position, making commitments with or without council. I found, when the question is asked as to why was a 4-year lease signed this past summer, well, I don't actually have an answer to that because it never came to council. So this is one of those, this is where this concern comes, is I would like in some semblance to be able to have a decision that we know and feel confident that the council was behind and knew our position, or at least would provide a direction to somebody specifically with what it is that we consider to be our goals, our intentions, our position, and what it is that we wanted to come out of meaningful discussions as well.
Thank you. I agree with your statements. I find that, I have met with the seniors. I've met with the seniors and the Indigenous government leaders. I've met with the president of the Senior Society. Excuse me. And again, going with right now, the current motion that council has is to terminate the leases and to enter into discussions for long-term agreements and interim use of the facility. So, sorry, this finding it hard to breathe. Right now, the intent of the discussions that I'm having is to get clarity on the positions, on all of the concerns that there are, and how we can together move forward on this issue. Any further discussion? So, all in favor? Thank you. Passed unanimously. Councillor Couvret.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that the Community Services Standing Committee minutes for March 9th, 2021 be adopted as presented.
Thank you. Can I get a seconder, please? Councillor Campbell. Discussion? Councillor Cox.
Just a question about the order of information on page 10 of the minutes. And I believe that the bottom paragraphs of the discussion, I believe that happened above the recommendation in between the two recommendations. I did not flag this with Madam Clerk earlier today because I wasn't sure if I remembered that correctly, but I'm pretty sure that discussion happened before the final recommendation. So that just might need to be cut and pasted to in between the two recommendations, but looking for, I guess, feedback from the rest of council on whether or not my memory is accurate.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. That is my recollection as well. Councillor Couvret.
Maybe I just misheard, I don't know, but the recommendation would have to be made out of camera. You're not allowed to, as far as I understand, allowed to make a motion or move a recommendation in camera. It has to be done once you come out of camera.
So under the Community Services Standing Committee minutes, on page 10, there is discussion noted after the recommendation was made. So we were just having that request to have that moved up before the recommendation. Thank you. Any further discussion? So, Councillor Couvret, do you wish to change your motion to as amended? For the minutes? Okay. Councillor Campbell, thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Passed unanimously. Next is an appointment. Councillor Cox.
I move that Roma Karam Navas be appointed to the Community Services Advisory Board for a term ending December 31st, 2022.
Thank you. Can I get a seconder, please? Councillor Pissinger. Discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Passed unanimously. Next, we have the mill rate bylaw. Councillor Westwell.
I move the 2021 mill rate bylaw 1013 be brought to regular meeting of council on March 16th, 2021 for first and second reading.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Couvret. Discussion? Mr. Morrison.
Thank you. As discussed at the time, there are actually two mill rate bylaw 1013s presented. One that uses the same weighting, jurisdictional weighting as previous years, and another one which has a 5% increase in weighting on institutional. And so council wished to have both available to make the decision. Between then and now, I did forward council a document that showed the non-government facilities that would also feel the impact of this change in weighting. And I think it was mostly churches. So there you go. So that will be before council. And so I think for clarity, when the bylaw actually shows up later in the package, when it's read in, council would actually read the mill rates to make sure that we have the appropriate mill rates read into motion.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Any further discussion? Mr. Morrison?
I don't know that we have direction on which mill rate council wishes to read in. So
Councillor Westwell?
Just for clarification, I believe it is the second mill rate, which is the one that includes institutional weighting. If that's the case, and that would be the one that I intend to move for a recommendation.
Councillor Westwell, you have a motion on the floor. Do you intend to change the motion for the new bylaw that was presented, or to leave it as it is to?
As this is just the recommendation,
Just leave it.
I'll think of just leave it until our
Thank you.
following bylaw.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Passed unanimously. Half-day civic holiday. Councillor Couvrette.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that the afternoon of Friday, March 12th, 2021 be declared a half-day civic holiday in conjunction with the Wood Buffalo Frolics weekend.
Thank you. Can I get a seconder for the motion, please? Councillor Westwell. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? One opposed, Councillor Campbell. Thank you. Motion is passed. Councillor Westwell.
All right, now that I've already voted for the mill rate bylaw, I might as well get on with the other unpopular bylaws. Recommendations. Whereas the town of Fort Smith has regularly found itself in antagonizing positions with leaseholders within the town of Fort Smith facilities and lands, and whereas the town of Fort Smith seeks to act in the interest of all residents and address the needs of all town of Fort Smith facility users, both fairly and equally, and whereas the town of Fort Smith can change over time, and the ability to enact change is an instrumental component of good governance and leadership. And I move that the town of Fort Smith no longer enters into private leases for spaces or lands within the town of Fort Smith facilities or spaces when such leases do not allow the town of Fort Smith to determine the use and design of a space, or that prevent the public or public user group from being able to access that space at the discretion and determination of the town of Fort Smith.
Can I get a seconder, please? Councillor Couvrette. Discussion. Councillor Westwell.
Got to hear me say lots about this already last week. I haven't radio in a while, and boy, I think it might be our most watched YouTube video. I'm not sure. It's got some high views. So, I'll speak to this. In the end, I can keep it pretty short. And I touched on this a little bit last week. I believe in the town of Fort Smith. I've seen an amazing improvement in community and recreational services as my tenure as council has gone on. I've seen them branch into previous areas of programming, delivery, and services previously unknown to the town of Fort Smith, or previously run by organizations that may have given up running, or had passed on running, or simply hadn't been run a long time, or that it was something that was dire to community need. It was either being underserviced or not serviced at all, but addressed as a need of the community, whether it be childcare, whether it's getting involved in the library, whether it was getting involved in varying sports and recreations, changing our way that we employ our staff and changing the way that we program for the community, listen to the community, engage with the community. I think the Community Services Department has done more than an admirable job, and I am endlessly proud that after more than a decade of hearing from the community the requirements for a reliable, dependable, and fair and accessible childcare facility was needed, even at the pleas of other childcare operators, that the town was able to do so and backed it both as a council and as an administration, even though it was a instrumental or a massive undertaking. Worth pointing out that we deliver a lot of recreational programming, though, and the only ones that we seem to demand to be cost neutral are the ones that are actually most instrumental to the economy, being childcare. Most other our community services are not required by council to make sure that they are cost neutral, even though they don't necessarily have a directly correlated economic impact on the community like childcare does. But either way, I believe in what the town has done and what council and mayor has been able to enact and change and try to empower the staff to do. The reason I bring up, so I believe in the town, is because I think the narrative that has been pitched, certainly what seems to be, has presented to me, that somehow the town council is interested in evicting or kicking out in the streets seniors, or somehow is in somehow the best interests, or some interest or conspiracy to disenfranchise or disassemble a society. When realistically, I believe we can enhance the space. I understand the opposition and I understood to what we're trying to do, and I understand the challenges of change management. But realistically, I actually believe in the vision that's been presented to us, that I think that we can make the space better, not the cost of another organization who's had the space and uses the space, but that we can actually make the space better for its intended user. From the letters we've received from other politicians, questionable in nature or not, the general intent is, I think, that we all want the same thing. We want a space that's best for seniors, but I actually believe that I think we have the capacity to do that. Me, it's been as I read comments or hear comments from people, one of the issues that was brought forward was the idea of accessibility and making a space more accessible to those at risk or those in need. And to that, it's not a hard analysis to say that, besides the data that we have, that I think that this is 100% in our interests and our goals to make that space more accessible to those at risk, those in need. And that by doing so results in it not being a locked door. That it's a matter of approaching a front desk in a facility that is going to be staffed for 7 days a week now, and for long hours, because we've centered a sort of number of crossover services that will allow the facility to be more open to more of the public for more hours at even a lower cost, because we've managed to gain some efficiencies. But still, I believe that our intention is true, and I believe that the town has been acting in the best interest of everybody, and administration has presented us with as much background information and as much data as we can. And sure, we fumbled our negotiation process or discussion. The giant pandemic in the middle of it certainly didn't make for a great start to shortly after our first public engagement session at the rec center, everybody was locked out, or we went down into a lockdown for 5 weeks. Certainly didn't help things. But generally, I truly believe that, one, I hope that meaningful negotiation or meaningful dialogue can continue, but that this is my position on the space. And I think that the track record we have with leasees proves the validity of that case, and that I think that the success rate of the town has shown in its ability and capacity to deliver excellent programming for all ages and users, and our ability to enhance that further with a case that has been presented to us for the use of the space and its intention will go even further to enhancing that space for seniors, for curlers, for everyone. I think that we've done, though not a perfect job, a fantastic effort has been made to ensure that engagement can happen or will happen or does happen. I can't make people come to meetings, I can't make people see posters at the post office. I can't make people see Facebook. I can't make people. There's just outside of individually going door to door and dragging people to consultations. So I value the work that has been done to bring us information. I trust that the information that we have been brought has been brought accurately. It certainly has been brought to us by professionals who collect data. Again, all that aside, I still think and I still believe that what we are trying to do is improve the space, make the space more accessible, make the space still for seniors, but not just definitively for the senior society, but for seniors to work with a partner organization to still make the space more accessible and more open to its intended demographic and others. I think there's a huge amount of programming and data that shows with the right resources like we have within the organization that you can do creative and amazing things to go a long way towards integrating seniors into the community and into all age groups and all age groups back into seniors to make it truly part of the community goal that brings the community together. And I actually believe that that is our goal. That is our intention. Now, it speaks way out of scope to what my intention is here because it is basically to get focus on leases. But this is why every situation we've entered into where we have tried with a leasee, where we have tried to make a change or suggest a change or simply ask someone to follow their lease agreement has resulted in political turmoil and disinformation that has resulted in further political turmoil and misinformation about what exactly is going on, sometimes over something as simple as not making French fries to something as simple as someone literally trying to co-opt town land. It continues to be a problem, and I think negotiating, one, I trust the organization, and two, I trust that we can come up with a way that we can have user agreements that are fair and equitable to all users, that is still to the benefit of the community. We have done it in our arena, and I think we can do it in our rec center as we have with all other spaces that continue to do well. And I think for the future that this isn't an end, but a new beginning. I think that this sets a better standard for us to go forward with equal user agreement approaches to every user group, that everybody has an opportunity and a footing to try to work out what works best with their group, as long as it doesn't come at the cost of us being able to say or prevent someone else from accessing the space. We have to be able to determine use and design and programming in our own buildings and spaces. And every time that we have not, it has resulted in, I guess just use the word, a mess, or it becomes messy at best. But generally, that's where this is rooted on. One, I'd like to see us adopt at least some position going forward, where at least we have a position to negotiate user spaces for, and that core position should be that I truly think the spaces and public spaces should be accessible to everybody, and that the town of Fort Smith should be able to determine the use and design of their spaces. Because again, us as a council are elected by our peers and by our constituents, by our groups, to make these decisions. And normally that is by everybody, not by one particular group. And I think that our interests should also similarly act in the interests of the public as a whole. And this motion seeks to sort of clarify the town's position moving forward with all user groups, that this is what we ask, at least for us to be able to program and use the space. And I trust the town to be able to do that. I think they've shown a fantastic track record of doing so. And all we have to do as council half the time is either provide direction or sometimes just provide the funding for them to be able to do so. I think that they've delivered where we have directed admirably.
Thank you, Councillor Westwell. Mr. Couvret?
Thank you, Your Worship. I think the motion sort of speaks to the desire of our council to look forward, be able to look at all our assets throughout the community, and how can we best maximize the use of those facilities, be it rooms within our rec center, our arena, other facilities, access to trails, everything else. If you look at page 27 of the Town of Fort Smith Community Services Master Plan, section 4.3 reads, maximize the use of existing facilities and outdoor recreation infrastructure. And it talks to ensure that 50% of the community recreation space are adaptable and flexible to accommodate the diversity of recreation and cultural program and services needs within the town of Fort Smith. And the next point is maximize the use of existing community facility space in town. Work with residents, partners, and community stakeholders to reconfigure the community and recreation center to ensure efficient and inclusive use of the space within the facility. I think it's our desire to try and have these fantastic facilities. They're not available in most other communities across the NWT and even in a lot of communities in Alberta and other places. We have rich cultural and heritage values within our community. And this whole discussion's led me, I sit back and go, why are we down this road even? Here we are as a community trying to make things better for everybody. And here we are, sort of just haggling over who controls the keys. We've got this facility. Why not ensure that it's being used? Expand our programming capacity. We're obligated to do that as a council. We're here to improve the lives of our residents, our constituents. And if we don't do that, we're failing to live up to what we promised the day we were sworn in here in office, to look at the best interests of our community, everybody, be it our youth, seniors, at-risk people. And we can't do it with our hands tied by leases. And these leases extended to things like the canteen space previously. There was issues. So I'm going to support the motion. Thank you.
Councillor Cox.
Thank you. As I'm sure each of us has, I've given this motion much consideration over the last week. I thought we had a good discussion, dynamic discussion during committee meeting last week. And reading this week's meeting package and reviewing the minutes from last week, I found helpful in considering various points of view, both among council and those points of view have been reflective in the discussions I've had with residents in the community since then. I plan to vote in favor of this motion because I believe it's in the best interests of the community. As Councillor Couvret just alluded to, or actually said, we were elected to make decisions in the best interests of the community, and I think this motion does just that. Because town facilities and spaces and lands are assets for the entire community, and access to those facility spaces and lands should not be unduly limited to any individual or user group. Such limitations restrict a community's access to its own assets, and in this situation, the town's ability to do programming. I prepared a lengthy statement to address some of the more specific concerns specific to the previous leaseholders in the Community and Recreation Center. much of which has already been said. I will, however, repeat what I said during committee last week, and that is that the town of Fort Smith is not evicting the Fort Smith Senior Society or the curling club from their respective spaces at the in the community recreation center. Yes, we terminated the leases. That was a separate motion. Earlier this year, we terminated the leases to facilitate construction during renovations to the facility. That does not mean the user groups will not have access to their respective spaces during construction or after after renovations are completed. As we have discussed during discussions regarding previous motions already this evening, the town has committed to entering into new user agreements with both user groups once the renovations are completed, as well as interim user agreements to meet the needs of both user groups during construction. And those user agreements, as we passed a motion earlier this evening, regardless of how I know Councillor Westwell thought the wording could be more deliberate on that previous motion. But regardless, those user agreements will guarantee access to the respective spaces for both the Fort Smith Senior Society and the curling club, Curling and Winter Sports Club, I believe is the official name. Yes, I plan to vote in favor of the motion because I really do believe it is in the best interest of the community. I think the discussion we have had this week or this evening and last week is evidence of the challenges that the town has had with leases, long-term leases, private leases for space. And I think it's in the best interest of the community to no longer enter into private leases. Thank you.
Councillor Campbell.
Oh, I'm going to vote against this motion. And I don't think the lease should ever been canceled due to construction. Just close the area down until the construction is done. And do we know what the seniors want? They don't want something. Our local seniors don't want something that's our administration is handing to them saying it's good down south. They like to make their own decision what they want to do and everything. And do we think we could do better work than the seniors are doing for themselves? And they need their own space. The seniors are at risk too, and they are in need. And we have to listen to our seniors because we have lots of seniors there that use that room and enjoy it. Let's just give them back their lease and let them be. Thanks.
Councillor Kissinger.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I guess I will begin where, as Councillor Westphal had mentioned, nowhere else for the size of the community of Fort Smith do people get the services we have. We should be very proud of that. Nowhere else. And to me, that happens because the community comes together and works together when they want something. We need to be flexible and willing to work together with people. That's our whole community. Look at daycare. How did that happen? We came together. We knew we needed something. We should be all very proud of that. You know, that's Fort Smith. That's what we are. Very proud to live here in Fort Smith. That's because we work together, we're flexible, we come together, and we listen to our needs and wants of the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kissinger. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is passed. 2 opposed. Councillor Campbell, Councillor Kissinger. Municipal Services, Councillor Couvret.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that the Municipal Services Standing Committee minutes from March 9th, 2021 be adopted as presented.
Seconded by Councillor Campbell. Discussion? All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you. Land acquisition. Councillor Couvret.
I move that council direct Keith Morrison, SAO, to acquire lot 1009, plan 1235, 61 Portage Avenue, at the amount owed to the town as of the auction date, but not the obligation to acquire.
Seconded by Councillor Cox. Discussion? Councillor Westwell.
Good luck. I guess I hope that the town of Fort Smith can overpay for an eyesore and correct the problem.
Councillor Couvret.
Well, just an eyesore that we can remove from our one of our prime public spaces, being Connie Bear Park. And with that, the acquisition of this, or the hopeful acquisition of this property, we'll be able to move forward some initiatives within Connie Bear Park and provide additional services to our well-serviced community already.
Further discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Passed unanimously. Land acquisition bylaw. Councillor Couvret.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that council bring forward the land acquisition bylaw 1014 to the regular meeting of council on March 16th, 2021 for first and second reading.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Cox. Discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Passed unanimously. Deferral, Councillor Cox.
I move that the in-camera session in accordance with section 23, subsection 3, subsection D of the Cities, Towns, and Villages Act to discuss the salary, benefits, or performance record of an employee be forwarded to the Corporate Services Standing Committee meeting on April 6th, 2021.
Seconded by Councillor Couvret. Discussion? All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you. 2021 mill rate bylaw, first reading. Councillor Westwell.
Realize that the backer has a giant blank page on it, so that makes this one a rather short and easy to read. But I just wanted to know for clarification if I should be moving the entirety of the bylaw and all of the mill rates as it was presented in our package. That was the will of the chair.
I believe it has to be fully read.
Thank you. Whereas the Municipal Council of whereas the Council of Municipal Corporation of the Town of Fort Smith in the Northwest Territories deems it to be in the public interest and is required by the provision of the Property Assessment and Taxation Act to establish mill rates for the municipal and school purposes, and now therefore the Council of the Town of Fort Smith at a duly assembled meeting enacts as follows. 1, that this bylaw may be cited as 2021 mill rate bylaw. 2, that the assessed property of the Town of Fort Smith liable to taxation in respect of which grants in lieu of taxes may be paid shall be liable for taxation and grants in lieu of taxes as follows. Make sure I got the right page now. A, residential developed, 1359. B, residential non-developed, 1359. Commercial developed, 2492. D, commercial non-developed, 2492. E, industrial developed, 2492. F, industrial non-developed, 2492. Losing words. G, institutional developed, 3172. H, institutional non-developed, 3172. J, recreation, 1359. I, recreational, 1359. J, telecommunications, 3021. K, country residential developed, 1178. L, country residential non-developed, 1178. M, country residential mixed use, 1359. 3, that the rate of taxation be applied to lands and improvements liable to taxation, or in respect of which grants in lieu may be paid for school purposes, shall be as follows for the year 2021. A, school levy, 253.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Couvret. Discussion? All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you. Second reading. Councillor Couvret.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll take the easy one here. I move that the 2021 mill rate bylaw 1013 be given second reading by title only.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Cox. Discussion? All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you. And acquisition, lot 1009. Councillor Westwell.
I move that land acquisition lot 1009, so you're supposed to say land acquisition bylaw for lot 10, no, my mistake. Start again. That land acquisition lot 1009, plan 1235, bylaw 1014 be introduced and given first reading. Whereas the Council of the Municipal Corporation of the Town of Fort Smith, the Northwest Territories, deems it to be in the public interest to acquire the lands described hereunder, and now therefore the Council of the Town of Fort Smith at a duly assembled meeting enacts as follows. 1, that the Municipal Corporation of the Town of Fort Smith is hereby authorized to acquire a freehold interest or fee simple title in the following parcels of land from the Starlight Corporation Limited: the whole of lot 1009, plan 1235 Fort Smith, 61 Portage Avenue, in consideration for the sum of the amount owed to the Town of Fort Smith as of the auction date. And 2, that the mayor and the senior administrative officer of said municipal corporation of the Town of Fort Smith, or lawful deputy of either of them, are hereby authorized the name and on behalf of the municipal corporation of the Town of Fort Smith to execute all such forms of application, bids, deeds, indentures, and other documents as may be necessary to give effect to this bylaw and to affix thereto the corporate seal of the municipal corporation of the Town of Fort Smith as the act of deed thereof, describing their names in attestation of such execution.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Cox. Discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Passed unanimously. Second reading. Councillor Cox.
I move that the land acquisition lot 1009 plan 1235 bylaw 1014 be given second reading by title only.
Seconded by Councillor Campbell. Discussion? All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you. Councillor Campbell.
Okay. I'd like to say thanks to our fire department for flooding our skating rink in old soccer field. And thanks to all the kids and adults that shovel the snow all the time. And that's a good part of it. I'd just like to, on my same old speech here again, on Wilderness and McDougall, we got it. I think it's a very dangerous situation with the trucks and vehicles parked there. We keep saying we're going to get back to it. And I keep bringing it up over and over. And and we have another one in the school zone too. We got to tell them to park further back where they're building a new RCMP house. If they could park along the road but further back, but they're cramping that stop sign and everything. Oh, sorry. They're cramping the stop sign. And that's about all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Councillor Couvret. Councillor Cox.
Thank you. I'm going to reiterate what Councillor Campbell just said. The parking of vehicles at intersections, particularly at McDougall and Wilderness, is it's creating a dangerous traffic situation. So whatever, I'm not sure if that's our bylaw enforcement can action that, but I personally notice and I hear from people about the gravel truck at the corner of Wilderness and McDougall. I notice it on a daily basis. I hear about it from others on a weekly basis. I have not yet noticed the parking of the vehicles at the construction site, just outside the school zone there off McDougall. But yes, that is an issue. And I know, Councillor Campbell, you have raised it before, so I'll just take the opportunity to reiterate. I also actually had on my notes, I'm just copying Councillor Campbell tonight, kudos for the outdoor rink. And thank you to the volunteers and sponsors really who are making it happen. It's providing a lot of kids and families are having fun using it. And I think Deputy Mayor Smith spoke to this last month. It's really great to see how the community has really come together to make it happen. And so there's lots to be proud of there. So thank you to everyone making it happen. And then just a general shout out to all the volunteers in the community who've made recent events, most sporting events, I guess, happen. I can't believe it, in the last couple of weeks. It started with the Tabachalapat and the snowboarding territorials, which were also combined with the Big Fun Snowboard event. Dog mushing races this past weekend. It was a great show along the highway. And I don't think I understood the extent of the operation and time and effort and resources that go into making that event happen until this past weekend. So thank you to the participants and the volunteers who made it happen. And then also we've got the fishing derby coming up this weekend, and it's nice to see. I guess I'm talking about the events because it's nice to see events starting to happen. And they're COVID friendly. People are abiding by COVID protocols, but people are finding a way to work around COVID and make these things happen. And there's a real positive energy as the days get longer and people are able to get together and participate in the activities they enjoy. So that is very good to see. And I had other items, but I will refrain. Thank you.
Councillor Pissinger.
Thank you. I guess we're all on the same page this evening with with the corner of McDougall and Wilderness. Even coming here to the meeting, I came that way, and you have to inch out to try, even getting a vehicle coming from the east going west on McDougall, and you're turning right on Wilderness. Very hard to see there too. And I guess also it was great to see all the kids out at the outdoor rink and stuff. And as Councilor Cock mentioned, like all the events happening. Great showing Fort Smith. And I guess the Tabacha Dog Mushers would just like to say, thank you to their sponsors, the mushers that came out. It was a great event. And also especially to thank the bylaw Gavin Burke for being there, coming out. He did an excellent job along with the RCMP. It's great to see organizations out supporting these events. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pissinger. Councillor Westwell.
Yeah, I guess I'll take a different tune. I don't know. I've already set myself back politically enough. I might as well just keep it going. I want to talk about something kind of strange, and it came up briefly at our municipal services meeting last week, and I didn't really kind of get the full breadth of it. But I'm a fan of political discourse as much as the next person. I think that every once in a while it can become a little toxic and nasty, and I certainly have done my fair share of fighting back on it when I feel like it is under the guise of misrepresentation or misinformation. But as much as I've been guilty in my past of figure waving at a bureaucrat or two, or sort of, broad stroke certain political parties and supporters of, I must say, the municipality, the town of Fort Smith, has a fantastic services and does a fantastic job of delivering services with the budget that they are delivered and they have. And don't know if I've ever commented on how I believe that you should not have to endure the level of asinine political commentary or conspiracy or insults and cyberbullying as you do on social media in the community. It's a long-going problem, but I got to tell you, the extent of fervor over what simply amounts to the town of Fort Smith should shovel my driveway for me is insane. I couldn't believe how long it went on. Some people seem to get quite wrapped in quite the fervor over what amounts to effectively the town did their job and cleaned the street. I haven't bothered to shovel my driveway all winter, and now there's a lump. And I get it. It's a problem. There's a process to deal with it. But realistically, and this goes back to my problem with ditch mowing, my goodness, it's not the garbage man can. We literally can't do everything. And the amount of comments about simply off the rail contacting the town of Fort Smith and being told it wasn't their responsibility, and then that starts a whole other conversation. And it literally is the amount of insults towards the capacity or capability of town staff by social media, by people, the public, who either taxpayers or not, is insane. And all I can do is to say I'm sorry you guys have to put up with such ridiculousness, and applaud those who manage to still do their jobs day to day, and appreciate those who don't bother to engage in social media, because my goodness, nobody should be subject to so much garbage over so little for an organization that does so much. Paul's not here to hear that, but Just the amount of upset. I realize that ebbs and flows. Administration gets used to hearing, well, when there's water in the ditches, this is the fervor of the day, and when it's snow and it piles up because it's winter, this is your day, and that's fine. And again, there's always political discourse, and there's always upset finger waving. I understand that, but just the extent to which people can get themselves wound up over what confuses me to what the start and finish of what they think that the town of Fort Smith's responsibility is to do with their own snow removal. I understand there's high ditches and all that, but again, some of the more personalized insults and comments on people make over again what is effectively your own property or the access to your property, which is quite clearly defined as not the town's responsibility to make sure that you've cleared. Again, I read it, and in sorrow, I feel like I've added unnecessary years and wouldn't wish it on anybody. So kudos for enduring.
Thank you, councillors. I just have a couple of comments this evening. One, I would like to thank the visitors in the gallery for coming out this evening. Two, I would like to notify council that we have been invited to meet with the Minister of Infrastructure and the Minister of Lands and ENR on the 24th of March at 10 a.m. If you are able to be there earlier, the MLA has asked that if we can be there at around 9:30. I guess that goes into my third comment, is that I did meet with the MLA. And we spoke about some of the budget items that were happening in the Legislative Assembly, the invitation of the ministers coming to Fort Smith, as well as some discussion around services in Fort Smith. So I think that we can have a larger discussion with the MLA and the ministers on the 24th, and I still would like to have the MLA come meet with council formally. That's everything I have for this evening. Morrison?
Thank you. Before I go to my non-existent COVID-19 update, I'll just address a couple of the comments. We're well aware of the concerns about the vehicles. We heard it very strongly earlier this month, and we've been hearing it from Councillor Campbell. Gavin has been out. The fact that the vehicles haven't been moved with the first round of Gavin being out means that the verbal warnings haven't taken. So we're looking now at ticketing and towing, that sort of thing. And so that's sort of the next step on addressing this stuff. So we're, I guess, partially on top of it. We're just looking at the next steps. And regarding the clean sidewalks, you don't have to worry about that. The employee who was responsible for doing such a good job quit because he couldn't take the negative comments on Facebook. So there you go. Well done, Fort Smith. He was on a term, and so he was given a choice of staying on with the department, and he chose to return to a different department because of the commentary. So there you go. No good deed goes unpunished. For COVID, I truly have nothing to update from our update last week. There's no new information out there. I think I saw some new data from Cabin Radio, but I think we've hit over 50% vaccination numbers now. There is talk of examining emerging wisely and transitioning into phase 3, which will allow more public events and whatnot. No real talk around bans or passports for those that are fully vaccinated yet. So we're still watching and waiting. There's been no official dialogue from the GNWT with the town on any specific issues related to COVID. In the town office, we're starting to bring people back in the office. It's actually quite full now. Audits happening currently, and so there's 3 auditors in, and so all the cubicles are full. We have installed higher partitions to try and make the cubicles more isolated, even though they are open air, and the mask policy still remains in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Any questions or comments by council? Okay, next, we have the capital plan. Mr. Morrison.
Certainly, it's the same plan as was presented last week, with just the addition of a steamer unit, a hot sea unit. It was mistakenly removed from the document that was presented last week.
Thank you. Councillor Couvret.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that the 2021 capital plan be accepted as presented.
Seconded by Councillor Cox. Discussion? All in favor? Passed unanimously. We have no proclamations this evening, and now I'm looking for absence of council members. Councillor Cox.
I move that Councillor Bolio, Councillor Pichinger, and Councillor MacArthur be excused from the Corporate Services Standing Committee meeting on March 2nd, 2021.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Campbell. Discussion? All in favor? Abstentions? 1 abstention. Councillor Pichinger. Motion is passed. I get a motion for this evening, Councillor Couvret.
I move that Councillor Bolio, Deputy Mayor Smith, and Councillor MacArthur be excused from the regular council meeting of March 16, 2021.
Thank you. Can I get a seconder for the motion, please? Councillor Campbell. Discussion? Councillor Westwell.
Only that it's a shame that so many work commitments came up this evening that we're able to have everybody participate in the lengthy discussion.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you. The date of our next council meetings: Corporate Services Standing Committee meeting on April 6th, 2021, Community and Municipal Services Standing Committee meetings on April 13th, and our regular meeting of council on April 20th. I'll take a motion to adjourn. Councillor Cox.
I move that the meeting be adjourned at 9:22 p.m.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Couvret. All in favor? Passed unanimously. We do have